Hello, everyone. Welcome to Law Answer Online. So, we all know June is the Pride Month, and we here are celebrating LGBTQI community rights all over the world. To answer the most common questions on this topic, we have law experts on our panel today. I would like to introduce Mr. Udin Mukherjee, retired from the Indian Police Service after more than 3 decades of service. He's a practicing lawyer in Delhi. He is member of the Supreme Court Bar Association and has handled litigation in diverse areas, including criminal matters, torts, writ petitions under the chapter on fundamental rights in the Constitution and contracts. He is author of 3 law books and 1 fictional book. And we have Ms. Krishna Parkhani, who's also a practicing lawyer in Delhi. She specializes in criminal law and gender justice related issues. Having pursued her LLM in criminal law, her core areas of practice are formulating anti-sexual harassment policies for workplaces, matrimonial disputes and domestic violence, criminal trials, and juvenile justice. So welcome, Mr. Mukherjee and Ms. Parkhani. Thank you for being part of this Q&A session with us and help us understand more about LGBTQIA community and their legal rights.
Thank you, Ms. Singh.
Thank you very much. It would be our pleasure and our privilege to answer your questions to the extent that we can.
Thank you so much. So my first question is, what are the criminal law provisions that can be used for the protection of LGBTQIA community?
All provisions of the criminal law enshrined in the Indian Penal Code can be used by the members of the community for protection. However, I would take this opportunity to highlight 2 facets. One is the 2013 amendment to criminal law, which has made stalking, voyeurism, as well as sexual harassment a punishable offense by amending section 354 of the IPC. However, these provisions are only applicable to women. Therefore, it would only be certain sections of the community who could use this provision.
Okay.
However, part 2 of this answer would entail section 377 of the IPC, which punishes unnatural sexual intercourse without consent. What this means is that any member of the community who faces any kind of sexual abuse from either of the 2 genders can complain to the police under section 377. Thank you.
All right. So I've heard about this Transgenders Protection Act 2019. Can you help us understand its features and help the audience understand more about this act?
Yes, so the Transgenders Protection Act of 2019 received the assent of the President only in December 2019. And through this act, we have the legal recognition for the transgender community because we now have legal definitions for intersex variations as well as transgenders. And this is a holistic act because it not only seeks to provide economic and social welfare of the marginalized sections, but it also seeks to criminalize offenses against the community. Section 16 specifically criminalizes any economic, verbal, or social abuse of transgenders. Furthermore, this act empowers them to ensure that they don't face discrimination in day-to-day life. Their right to life, which was actually recognized by the Supreme Court, has been crystallized in this act. They can rent property, they can own property, and they can live a respectable life in society. And this act actually acts as a bridge between them and the society. Furthermore, they have the provision for certification also in Chapter 3 of the Act. By this provision, they can approach the government to have a certificate made, which acts as their identity card also.
Okay. So what does this decriminalization of homosexuality mean?
All right. Traditionally, homosexuality has always been branded and treated in law as a criminal activity, dating back from the times of the Bible, where the Lord God struck down cities of Sodom and Gomorrah It's in the Old Testament of the Bible, where the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were struck down because of the fact that the people of those cities indulged in homosexuality. So from God knows what times, humanity, civilizations have treated such people as pariahs, and they are to be punished. However, the world has evolved, and it has evolved in keeping with the concept of privacy. As a fundamental aspect of legal jurisprudence, privacy is a right. And not only is it a right, it's a fundamental right.
Right.
So what two people choose to do, what two adult people choose to do in the privacy of their home is really nobody's business.
Very true. Yeah.
Right? So as long as they are not doing it in such a way that harms each other, as long as it does not result in physical or spiritual or mental trauma or harm, or it is not that it is done without permission, without consent. Now all these apply equally well to heterosexual sex. Not doing harm, doing it in privacy, doing it mutual consensus, and when somebody says no, it is no.
Absolutely.
What the law has tended to do in recent times is to extend the same basis of law to homosexuals, the LGBT. So, but that privacy is very important. So the concept of privacy itself came into existence only at the turn of the 20th century. And it was forth by two American jurists known as Warren and Brandeis. And then it evolved through US court decisions, time after time after time. Right? Until very recently in India, Section 377 of the IPC held same-sex intercourse to be a criminal offense, punishable with imprisonment. The first big attack on this kind of nonsensical legal provision was made by Justice Shah of the Delhi High Court in the case of Nas Foundation case, where he enunciated all this very clearly about privacy, about the emotional needs of people, and it being about none of the business of anybody as to what the sexual preferences of A, B, C, and D. Just as what I eat is a matter of choice, as long as I don't eat or serve poison. What faith I believe in is a matter of choice, personal choice. It's my privacy.
Right.
What I do in the four corners of my being, right? So it was Justice Shah who sort of said that this bit of Section 377, which apart from other aspects of carnal knowledge, held that sexual intercourse between people of the same sex was a crime. This should be done away with. However, bench of the Supreme Court, in its wisdom, the Sushil Kumar Modi case, turned it upside down, and said, no. It is the law, and if the parliament had wanted to do away with the law, it would have done away with it. If the parliament has not done away with it, why should we bother at this stage? Also, they said, made a very interesting statement. The bench said that for years together, nobody has been actually convicted under this section. Criminal proceedings under this section against homosexuals are very few and far between. So why should we, for this small fraction of, criminal action, why should we try and uphold what Shah judgment said? Interestingly, there was a 1961 case in the United States, Poe versus Ullman. Now, in a certain state, I think Carolina, advising on the use of contraceptives was banned.
Okay.
Certain family would have faced medical problems if the lady had conceived. So the doctor said, look, if you would have so many problems, you can use a contraceptive. This came to court. And the court, that time, in 1961, said, Arey bhai, this law has been on the statute book since 1871. Hardly anybody has been convicted. So why should we strike down the law? So the argument which the US court used in 61 was used by the Supreme Court, which is the Sushil Modi case, right? Nearly 80 years later, nearly 60 years later.
Yeah. That's
Right.
a long time. Yeah.
Yes, but fortunately, along came the Puttaswamy case and the Aadhaar card case, where the court for the first time laid down in black and white that privacy is a fundamental right. It takes within itself the right to free speech, the right to cohabiting with people whom we like, the right to live, the right to liberty, life, liberty, choices, speech, everything. Said that privacy is like a rainbow. It takes in all these rights. And mind you, rainbow is also the color of the
Color of, right.
That's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence. I said this in a lighter vein. After that, as I'm sure Krishna here will dilate, came the Nalsa case. So there came two cases. One was the Navtej Singh Johar case and the Nalsa case. Navtej Singh Johar case struck down that portion of 377 which rendered consensual sex among people of the same sex as criminal. And in that case, I am sure Krishna here would be able to throw. She's the expert on these matters. Krishna.
Thank you, sir. That was beautifully explained. And like you rightly said, that privacy is not just an intricate part of daily life. It is the fundamental way of life, and that is why it forms a part of right to life. And with this, I would like to discuss the Nalsa case because the Supreme Court, in its judicial activism, has not only respected the right to privacy of transgenders, but it has actually recognized them as a legal entity. And that is very important if one has to see their social, economic, and basic rights. I use the word basic rights because with this independent and distinct identity being given to them, they have been able to apply in all forms of private and government jobs. And unfortunately, though a good 5 years have passed since the judgment, it is still news when finally a transgender becomes a judge or finally they get an appointment in a school. So therefore, it shows that their social integration will still take some time. Now, with the judgment coming into place, they have right to a separate washroom in public places. They have right to education. They also have the right to better healthcare. And they have the right for serosurveillance and to map any communicable diseases, all of which is very important. Only when they have good physical and mental health will they be able to concentrate on their economic development and progress. The Apex Court has cast a duty on the central as well as the state governments for this purpose, and they must all have welfare schemes to ensure that there is economic and educational development of the community. And their freedom of speech, employment, their right to residence, and their right against discrimination has been recognized as a result of the Nalsa judgment.
All right. So that brings a lot of clarity on decriminalization of homosexuality. So what are the rights conferred by Supreme Court of India for this community?
The rights conferred by Supreme Court of India with respect to this community could actually be summarized in the preceding discussion itself. Like Mr. Mukherjee has rightly pointed out, the judgments of Navtej Singh Johar and the Puttaswamy judgment. These are landmark decisions which are actually, the Resha has been enunciated very rightly by Sir. And then comes the Nalsa judgment. And together, when you read these three judgments, they present a very nice picture of not just recognition, but their right to life. And it also speaks about the quality of life that an individual is entitled to. And these rights are extended not only to the citizens, but to all people within India.
All right.
Thank you.
You know, Monica, basically, the biggest gain that the LGBTQ1A community has, apart from the fact that, 377, that noxious, notorious provision of 377 has been struck down, which of course is a huge victory. What is more important, so they can have live-in relationships and all. More importantly, You see, a transgender is a gender by itself now.
Right, right.
The transgender, if he is sent to school or if he goes to some office, the transgender is not compelled to say that that transgender person is either a he or a she. The choice rests with the transgender, and the state, the machinery of the state and its institutions cannot discriminate against the transgender on the grounds of being a transgender. So Article 14 of the Constitution says every citizen of this country shall have equal rights under the law. Something which in the case of transgender had been rather nebulous. They seem to have fewer rights under the law. They were apparently treated as not quite first-rate citizens. What has happened with this catena of decisions is that their dignity has been restored. Their pride in themselves has been restored. Their ability and confidence to face the community, assert their existence as honorable citizens of this country has been restored. I think these are major milestones that have been achieved.
Yeah.
And it's their right to choice. Like you rightly said, it's the most important one of them would also be the right to choose. Before this judgment, they were compelled to choose between male or female.
Absolutely.
And that created a psychological impact because of which they did not have the right to work or represent themselves in public. Now, with them being recognized as a third gender, it gives them a sense of identity, which is very empowering.
Right. Very, very, very rightly. So, can a same-sex couple get married in India? We're
Not
talking
yet.
about the rights here.
Not yet. I'm sure the law is in the offing. Sooner or later, there are a number of cases in court, in fact. And what has happened is, recently certain high courts have said that, sorry, the law does not permit it. So we will not allow same-sex marriage. So to be honest with you, the law as it stands today does not recognize same-sex marriage. I'm not talking of live-in relationship. I'm not talking of relations. Formalized institution of marriage, as of now, does not extend to the LGBTQIA community. Hopefully, like in many countries, like in the West, it shall happen sooner or later, but it involves, a plethora of a vast area of relook at legislation.
Absolutely.
Inheritance. If you have marriage, you will also have divorce.
Absolutely.
Inevitably.
Right.
There will be questions of maintenance, questions of succession. Right. So personal laws or secular laws, civil laws which apply to non-transgenders, non-LGBTQ will have to be adequately crafted to be adapted suitably to the requirements of the transgender community. What happens if a husband and a wife, who is the husband and who is the wife? Who decides in a transgender marriage, in an LGBT marriage? Usually they decide by themselves.
Right.
It has to be given formal legal recognition.
Right.
And what happens if they quarrel? Would 498A IPC, under which a wife goes to the police complaining of mental and physical cruelty to her husband or in-laws, would that pari passu or mutatis mutandis extend to the transgender couple? Oh, but I'm very sure that within a reasonable time, lawmakers in India shall devote themselves to a proper amendment of certain statutes which can accommodate the requirements of the transgender community.
Right. It's a complex process, but we hope to see it in the near future. All right. So we're talking about live-in relationships that LGBTQI community can have. They cannot get married in India yet. Can they adopt a child?
No, as of now, the same-sex couple cannot adopt a child. Perhaps the reasons could again be those of inheritance, succession, but I'm sure here the legislation should have been more forthright. It could be done quicker. Right, but it has not been done. Actually, there is a notification of the Ministry of Women and Child Development sometime in 2017 about the entire adoption process, which does not extend to the LGBT community. The couple should have had suppose it's a married couple which wants to adopt a child, it should have had a stable marital relationship for 2 years.
Okay.
Ask me the answer to that question, what is a stable marital relationship? Nonetheless, that is what the notification prescribes. They should have had a stable marital relationship for 2 years, right? Both should agree, both persons should be in agreement about the matter of adoption. If one differs, no. They can adopt both a male child and a female, provided they have the means, etc. They have to convince the agency, right? Now, a single woman can also adopt a male and a female child, but a single man cannot adopt a female child.
Right.
This is the law in India. A male cannot adopt, he can adopt a male infant or a child, but not a female child. And similarly, but a single woman can adopt a child of either gender. The process of adoption, you see, again, is a matter of personal law. Why there's so much confusion? For example, Islamic law does not recognize adoption at all.
Right.
Adoption is not legitimate under Islamic law. Whereas under Hindu law, there is a Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. Christians can adopt. Right. So I think the reason why these things are not quickly finding their way in statutes or statutory amendments tailor-made for the transgender community is these are stumbling blocks. But then I'm just speculating. One thing I'm sure of, this is a temporary phase. Sooner or later,
We hope so.
statutes will come and this would all be taken care of.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for putting it so beautifully and clearly. It's not just for the LGBTQI community, but for general genders like we have here. So my last question is, we've been talking about the discrimination that LGBTQI community has been facing. So what are the legal remedies in case of workplace discrimination?
With respect to workplace discrimination, unfortunately, it is only the women who can take advantage of the Prevention of Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act that was established as a result of the Vishakha guidelines. And it is only the women who are recognized as victims of harassment at workplace under that special legislation. Therefore, they can complain to the Internal Complaints Committee. This is a specialized law. Now, what if you are in an organization that doesn't have an Internal Complaints Committee? In such a situation, one has the right to go to the police under the sections of IPC, and they are duty bound to register an FIR, and it would be a cognizable offense when it comes to harassment. Now, when it comes to, say, transgenders, they can take advantage of the Transgenders Protection Act, Section 16, which prevents any kind of abuse, verbal or physical abuse, and any kind of discrimination as well. Therefore, anyone who makes you feel uncomfortable in your workplace based on your personal choices would be liable for punishment under this act. Therefore, I would say that it is not just a specialized, in an ideal situation, the specialized legislation could have been gender neutral, but unfortunately, like we have seen that our society is going to take some time to recognize these relationships in all facets. Therefore, as of now, it is only the women, and we have the Transgenders Protection Act, which provides for remedies for discrimination.
So can they go to internal committee or police for filing or reporting any of such discrimination, or they have to first talk to the internal committee of any workplace?
It is a matter of choice, but if you do have an internal complaints committee, it is a faster redressal mechanism.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee, for answering these questions, and Ms. Krishna for putting this whole question and answers into one good video that people can take advantage of and understand it better. Like you said, our society is evolving, our laws are evolving. So I'm sure a lot of people could have more clarity after looking at this. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us on the panel.
Thank you.